Hello, I would like to talk briefly about sonata form. Sonata form is the form in which one movement of a piece of music can be in. So it's very important not to mix up sonata form with the genre sonata. Sonata as a genre really refers to a 3 or 4 movement work. That in a 3 movement work, maybe a fast movement followed by a slow movement followed by a fast movement, or as a 4 movement work, fast, slow, dance like fast. Um, Sonata form is the form in which one of the movements is in, and usually that is the first movement. Very often, the first movement in a sonata is in sonata form, but any other movement could be and is occasionally be in sonata form. Last movement is usually a rondo, but can also be a sonata rondo, which is a hybrid form between sonata form and rondo form. Anyways, by the way, when I say sonata as a genre, of course, I talk about music that is called sonata, which could be for just piano or for a solo instrument with piano, like violin and piano. But it also refers to the genre of symphony, which really is a sonata for orchestra, or the string quartet, which really is a sonata for string quartet. Anyways, now about sonata form, which is the form of one movement, and is usually the first movement of a sonata. Uh, so there may be an introduction, but that's not that common. If there is an introduction, it may be a slow introduction, because usually the sonata form is for the first movement of a sonata, so and that which is a fast movement, then you have a slow introduction. But that's not that common. So usually it really starts fast with theme one. So the first main part is exposition. So there are really 3 main parts: exposition, development, and recapitulation. The exposition starts with theme one, which is in the original tonic key. The key is really important, but of course, it has a theme, it has a unique melodic idea. Um, and so part of the theme may be motives, but it's a theme that may be 4, 8 measures long or sometimes longer. That is followed then by a bridge, or also called transition. So some textbooks say transition, some say bridge. It means the same thing. So the function of the bridge is to modulate to a new key and to connect the theme 1 with theme 2. So this may also anywhere between 8 or 12 measures long or longer. The longer you go, the further you go in music history, so let's say into the Romantic period, the longer any of these parts may be. So during the bridge is a modulation to a new key, and that new key is usually the dominant if the original key is a major key, or the relative major if the overall key is minor. Okay, and that is explained right here. So theme 2 then is in that new key. That means the dominant key if the overall key is a major key, or the relative minor key if the overall key is minor. For example, if the sonata is in, or the sonata, and then that first movement in which that is in sonata form is in A minor, then the bridge may modulate to C major, and so theme 2 and closing section and codetta, if there is one, and the beginning of development section would be in C major, and toward the end of the development it would modulate back to A minor, and the recapitulation would be mostly in A minor, except for a very short period of time during the bridge, or also called transition, during which the modulation does take place, but immediately back. But back to the exposition. Another example would be if the overall key is C major, then the bridge would modulate to G major, the dominant key. So theme 2 and everything that comes after would be in G major, in the dominant key. So theme two is also unique. If we talk about theme, then it is has unique characteristics with regard to the melody. There's a unique melodic design that is recognizable and that is used later again in the piece. Parts of it may be used in the development, and for sure it comes back in the recapitulation. Um, the theme two is usually followed by what we call a closing section. And if we go into romantic music, it may be called a closing theme or a theme two, a theme three, if the that closing section becomes thematic. So later in the romantic period, that may be the case. Anyways, the closing section is also in the dominant key. And in the classical period, the function is really to close out the exposition. There may or may not be a codetta, which is emphasizing the tonic, a short ending, which is very simple, at least in the classical period, just a 5-1-5-1, just to drive in um, the tonic key, or essentially in that case, since very often there's a repeat, setting up that what is the tonic here as a dominant, because if the exposition is being repeated, then it goes back, of course, to the original tonic key and everything is repeated. So very often we actually see a double bar with a repeat sign at the end of the exposition. So then after the repeat, then comes the development, and it starts thematically, very often with parts of theme one, but starting in that key to which the bridge modulated, so the dominant key or relative major key. Um, but what is the function? The function is to develop, but in quotation, to develop the theme, meaning to modify the theme, and to be restless in terms of the harmony. So there are lots of modulations in the development section, and toward the end of the development section, there is a what we call a retransition, a modulation back to the original key. So it sets up that once the recapitulation starts, we hear the original tonic key and usually theme one. I say usually because very early in the early classical or pre-classical period, the order in the recapitulation may have been different. So there are pieces that actually start the recapitulation with closing section, followed by theme two, going back to theme one, and ending the piece. But in the high classical period, and after that, during the romantic period, it's usually theme one that comes at the beginning of the recapitulation in the original tonic key, followed by the bridge, which is usually set up very similarly, and it does have a modulation very often, but immediately modulates back, and so then has theme two and the closing section that are usually, in terms of the musical material, melody, harmony, instrumentation, is identical to exposition, but it's in the original tonic key. It's in the tonic key, so whereby in the exposition it was in the dominant or the relative major key. Uh, so, and then there may or may not be a coda. There very often is a coda, and the coda really is to emphasize the tonic and to drive in the tonic and to end the piece with a very strong sense of the tonic. So you may, in a high classical piece, may hear that 5-1-5-1 or 5-7-1-5-7-1 several times, that it almost becomes nauseous. But that is part of that music. It becomes more interesting during the Romantic period. Note, in Romantic music, movements are longer and themes are often theme groups consisting of several sub-themes. So even as I mentioned earlier, the closing section may become thematic. Sometimes even codas may be thematic, or there may be thematic elements being used in the coda during the Romantic or late Romantic period. Anyways, this is a very general structure. Every piece is very unique. The idea is, I mean, this is a general idea, but what makes the music unique is that there are always deviation and slight differences between any piece of music that you look at. So listen to lots of pieces in sonata form, and you will enjoy the great variety with which these sonata form principles have been employed. Anyways, enjoy listening to sonata form movements. Thank you. Bye.